Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is the September meeting of the Germantown Planning Commission. I hope everyone had a good holiday, safe holiday. And we have copies of our agenda on the podiums. If anyone would like a copy of the agenda, please feel free to come up and get one. And with that, we would like to call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Here.
Mr. Saunders?
Here.
Ms. Higgs?
Here.
Mr. Bennett?
Here.
Chairman Harms?
Here, and we have a quorum. First, part of the business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Is there any additions, subtractions, modifications to the minutes? I've been asked to remind everyone that we do have a withdrawal on the agenda. Item 3 is withdrawn. I think if you can see it on the board up front, and it should be in your copy of the agenda. With that said, we'll go back to the minutes. Do we have any changes in the minutes? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes.
Ms. Higgs?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Abstain.
Chairman Harms?
Abstain. And we have approval of the minutes. Our first item of business is Trevure. Mr. Ross, do you have a presentation from staff?
Thank you, Chairman Harless. Item 4A in front of you tonight is Trevure Plan Development Phase 4, approval of a revised preliminary and final plan. The Smart Code Review Committee reviewed this project on August 22nd. A little background though, this is in the Western Gateway area that was rezoned to the T5 district as part of the rezoning plan in October of 2014. The T5 district requires a minimum 20-foot tall building and allows for 5-story buildings with 6 stories as a warrant. This outline plan for Trevure was approved in 2015. The preliminary plan for Phase 4 was discussed in 2015 at that time, and they were considering a 2-story building. They came back for final plans in 2016 to amend that to a 3-story building with a basement garage feature in November of 2016, and the Planning Commission approved that. At this point, they're coming back to amend that plan to, after reviewing various scenarios and other materials that were necessary to build that plan. They decided that that may be a more challenging feat than they wanted to move forward with. So they have come back with a revised preliminary and final plan that reflects a 2-story building with 104 parking spaces, 97 of which are sized appropriately. 3 are going to require a warrant to make them 9 by 16 spaces rather than the 180 square feet. And there's going to be 4 handicap parking spaces. Under the SMART code, especially when you look at the 2 land uses that they're going to incorporate in this mixed-use project, they're going to have an office component and a retail component. They are looking at a minimum requirement of 89 spaces. A maximum requirement would be 172 spaces. And when you consider the sharing factor provided within the SMART code to allow for office and retail to work together, it is a requirement of only 73 spaces. So by parking count number, they are above by 31 spaces overall. They do have 2 warrants associated with this, and any warrant must be granted approval by both the Planning Commission as well as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The following language is from the Smart Code section 745. In determining justifiable reasons for granting a warrant, the Planning Commission shall take into account, among other relevant factors that may be applicable, the relationship of the property to other properties, whether the deviation would be in accord with the intent of the Smart Code, principles of good land use planning as those may evolve over time, the topography of the property, peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties, or undue hardship upon the owner of the property. However, in determining whether to grant a warrant, financial hardship shall not alone be considered sufficient to justify a deviation. And in all accounts, the Planning Commission shall take into consideration whether the proposed deviation may be granted without substantial detriment to public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the Smart Code provision. Already touched on some of these things that are coming up on the slide. The 2 warrants, I want to focus on warrant number 2 to start off with, because it is a request to modify the standard parking space size. It is justified within the application that's in front of you. But what they're trying to request is to create smaller spaces in the area where the dot is at this point. It's 3 spaces set aside on the edge of the roundabout, but it will still be behind a knee wall that will have landscaping in front of it. Those spaces will be designated for compact car only. Again, even when you take those 3 spaces out of it, and the handicap parking spaces, they're at 97 parking spaces, and under the requirements of the code, they are only required 73 spaces with the sharing factor included. Warrant number 1 is something that we discussed at length in both the subcommittee, Smart Code Review Committee, and the Executive Committee meetings. And this is where the vehicular entrances of parking lots or garages shall be no wider than 30 feet. And it also, a second section of the code, 793A3, says that driveway widths, entrances into parking lots, garages, and parking structures shall be no wider than 24 feet at the frontage. This is a western driveway entrance, right in, right out, that is approximately 52 feet wide. If you look at these 2 sections, these 2 sections contradict each other. It was the recommendation of the Smart Code Review Committee, and it was further emphasized by the members of the Economic Development Commission to move forward with a text amendment that aligns this language so that it does not conflict with these 2 sections, nor does it conflict with the fire code, which requests a minimum of 26 feet for any entrances, driveways, or drive aisles within any developments. So we will be working forward to move forward with that. So this is a warrant that the code is generating by conflicts within itself, but the second warrant is related to a design modification that the developer would like to move forward with. This is the building elevations that were reviewed by the Smart Code Review Committee, and the materials were provided. At the Smart Code Review Committee, they talked about covered parking, and the request was made by that review committee to make the materials more substantial, make it blend with the building better. So they provided an awning that will be the same materials and color that the awnings that are on the rest of the building are being made out of. And they've separated it away from the building, but used posts and beams that are using the same material that is being used on the rest of the building. was separated from the building so it would not have to be sprinkled or facilitate any further warrants as associated with it. Staff can conclude our remarks at this point, but the developer is here and would like to make a few remarks and has a presentation of their own.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Pam, would you let the record reflect that Alderman Forrest Owens has joined the commission?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of staff? If not, if the developer would like to come forward, the applicant, and I understand you have a video. You'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Brown Gill Properties, 8130 Macon Station, Memphis, Tennessee 38018. Good evening. So originally, we had the two-story building. We came back with a three-story. Y'all remember that? When we bid the three-story, and we really worked hard, it came in at, it kept coming in around $350 a foot. It just didn't make sense to build. The basement was really expensive, and the third story, we didn't have anything leased for the second story, so we decided to come back down. So we asked for the third time we redesigned this building. You can imagine it's costly, especially with a really good architect like Bill Thoda and John Galbraith over there. We think they've actually done a better job with it. We think Ray and I like it more now than we did even the first two-story. This gives you a sense of the overall plan, and with what is existing around the property now. Who knows when the Fogelman property will develop? It may not develop in my lifetime. This shows still a three-story building. We didn't change this rendering for this, but it gives you a sense of the shared parking between all three sites. Parking garage is very easy to use. This gives you another sense. That's still a three-story building, but it gives you a sense of the avenue we're trying to create. This is the landscape plan. I really want to just deal with the main issues. We felt like, as we said, this is going to be a much better looking two-story building than the original two-story building we proposed. It also has this pop-out, which you can't see very well on this, but that entire front section pops out to the west, creating an L. And for the, all buildings have to have a rear. And because retailers are hopefully going to be in the first floor, we've got to provide electrical service and gas service to them. So what we did, and we heard you at subcommittee, I think that was a very good point that was brought up. First thing we did is group them. So we grouped the gas meters and we grouped the electrical meters. And we grouped them in two sections. And I just want to go back. Let's see if I can go back. We grouped them, we grouped, there's a section of grouping. I don't know if this is the gas or electric there on that corner. So if you're going down Poplar Avenue, you can't see it. And the other group is in front of the covered parking. When we tried to start laying out walls in the back, we had to keep the walkways ADA accessible. So when we tried to push something right up against the gas bank or the electrical bank, it created too small of a gap and then hindered the width of the back sidewalk. So then we thought about, well, can we build a wall? If we built a wall in front of each of those two banks, a car could run right into the wall because you'd have to put it on the curb right in front of the car, so you could have the full width of the sidewalk. So that's when we started talking about their placement and if you could see them from Poplar and what was going to happen next to us. So I wanted to get some shots. So this is sitting on Poplar. So I wanted to deal with this directly. What are you going to see from Poplar? Well, let's assume there's a lot more vegetation than what's on this rendering, but the multifamily, the Fogelman multifamily is to the right. As we come into that right in, right out, we're coming down. We still can't see the back of the building, even on the right in, right out. This is another shot getting a little closer in. Still can't see the back of the building. And then we're going to have parking all along the back here. So this is the movie that we actually built from that section. Let's So if you're going down Poplar, I just wanted to make sure that you were not going to be able to see any type of utility, gas or electric. I think Commissioner Bennett brought up, we got to get it right, and I agree with you. Smart code, we've got to execute correctly. And I think Treviewer overall does, especially if we can get the hotel construction going again. But when it's all said and done, we want it to be a Class A project for decades to come. So I'm less worried about it because I don't think that you're going to be able to see either of the gas meters or the electric meter because the cars that are going to be in park, and I know you're not going to be able to see anything from Poplar. So this is going to be the view from Poplar. So,
Quick question.
yes, sir.
Mr. Gill, this is right in, coming in off of Poplar and going south. And you started the video. Can you show it all the way down? Where are the, am I going to see am I going to go by the electric meter and gas meter?
If you kept going down
Yep.
the road, you would go by them. We'll try.
Can you go down that far?
Sure, let's see if we can. Let's see if we can start. So the first, either the gas or electric, is in this corner after you turn it, and we don't see that. This is y'all's computer stalling, isn't it, Mr. Ross? All right, we jump. The computer is having trouble, I think, with the size of the file, but yeah, the first would be to your left in that corner. The computer's having some problems with the size of this file, but
How much space is there between the meter and the sidewalk?
that's a good question.
There's approximately 6 feet for the meter.
So the meter is against the building, right?
Right,
And there'll be a
right,
bank
right.
of gas meters.
Right.
And then, I'll let Bill, this is the architect, Bill Thoda.
I don't have the
If you'd
exact.
state your name
All right,
and
my
address.
name is Bill Thoda, Thoda, with Thoda and Associates, 5159 Wheelers Drive, Suite 100,
Thank you.
Memphis, Tennessee. I don't have that exact dimension. I did not scale it, but I know the other day when we were working on this, it is approximately 6 feet clearance on the service walk between the meter and the edge of the curb. And one of the reasons why the wall creates a problem is because it is a service walk to service all the retail facilities back there. And if we get it too crowded, then we're going to have a problem just taking care of the facilities.
And I guess what I'm asking is, can you put some landscaping in front of the gas meter, electric meter? Not a wall, just,
Realistically, I don't believe you can. I mean, if you got a wall, gas meter's going to stick out 18 inches to 2 feet, then you got about 6 feet. You'd have to have a couple of feet to have some decent landscaping in there. Now you've got to walk back down to where it's 4 feet or so. It's too small for a service walk for people to get things in and out of the rear of their facilities. You know, we have a landscape screen along the property line that created, most of it screened by the dumpsters, but, and the meters are located on that solid portion of the building right there behind where the cars were.
okay. Thank you, sir.
Basically, I think the last thing I'll say is that all buildings have to have a rear. And I think the hope is that when Fogelman does develop their property, that this side will also be a rear that they'll have, that will be more like an alley, that this is a side entrance, and we don't have another place to put those items. We can't put them on the south side facing the hotel because they're too far from the retailers. They need to be
Mr. Gill,
closer
you don't
to
think
the
there's going to be customers going in that way?
No, I hope they go down the main drive at the signal. I don't see customers, I see customers using, you know, this drive in and then finding a parking spot in the back and then coming back up. It's, the covered parking's really for our own office use upstairs.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So, Mr. Gill, can you go back and I know we've talked about this before, but on the west side of the building, architecturally, you do have doors. There is some measure of storefront on the west side. So do you contemplate those being public entrances?
No, not at all.
No.
Absolutely not. Those are going to be the back of retailers, and there'll be a door. We'll go into the building, into the main, let's see that large glass area in the middle? You can access that from both sides. The parking in the back of the building is for my employees, and they'll walk into that glass entrance and go up the elevator or use the stairs to go to the
The
second
entrance
floor.
right in the middle.
That's right.
So, but that'll be
That's the
public.
main,
That'll be a public.
this is the east side. This will be the main.
Oh, this is
public.
the east side.
Yes, sir.
Can you show the west side?
Let's see if I can. So, I don't know if I have a, that's the east elevation. All right, so this is the west elevation. You can see,
So like those doors right in the middle, that's not a public.
those are not public entrances at all. Those are storeroom doors for retailers. They'll stay locked all the time.
So you contemplate, for all of the parking back there, that's really contemplated to be employee parking?
It's really employee parking from Gill Properties, or for whatever office tenants upstairs if it wasn't me.
And isn't there 107 parking spaces in that lot?
104.
Yes,
I mean, it's not all employee parking going to be back there, is my understanding, Mr. Gill. It's going to be people that are visiting that retail establishment are going to be using that. I believe they're going to be turning right into there and parking. They
well,
can't go from that back parking lot and through, they got to walk all the way around the building?
no, they can go through the building. So you see where the two buildings are separated? See the gap?
Correct.
That's a glass entrance that you can walk all the way
So
through.
that's what I thought. I thought I heard something different when Mr. Bacon asked the question, that you couldn't go through that door.
No,
So you
you
can go through there?
you can go through here, but all my employees will pick up, they'll use all of this parking. And you may have some customer parking here, but it will probably be employee parking for the retailers that are here. I mean, you're gonna have a restaurant in here that'll employ at least 20 people. So every single person in the back here will be either, my guess, a person that works at Gill Properties or the office tenant above, or an employee of one of the retailers.
So the restaurant, how do you get into the restaurant?
That's a great question. It's something we talked about at subcommittee. Like, where do you park at night? So let's say you come back, you work at the building all day, you park in the garage, you come back with your wife. I'll tell you the easiest way to illustrate it is on this. So, have you used the garage at all yet, Commissioner Bacon? It feels so much, it's much tighter than it looks on this plan. So you'll be surprised, if you use the garage every day, you would go back and probably park in the garage and then walk right down Poplar Avenue to the restaurant. It looks farther on this plan, but I walk it all the time, and it's very easy to park in the garage and access the whole site.
So it's contemplated that, I mean, all of the restaurant patrons really are going to park in the garage and not on the south side of the building?
I think
Try
that,
to walk up.
I think
some way.
so. I think a lot, as you start to use it more, like using, I'm trying to think of a restaurant. One of the restaurants that I think of that has very little parking, something like River Oaks. It doesn't have much parking. You just get used to how you access, or Southern Social, that's even a better one. Always hard to find a parking space. But you kind of know the times to go, and you kind of find your spot. And once you've experienced it, you'll probably hear park in the garage. It's just way tighter than it's very walkable. So I think it achieved the goals of smart growth because of how walkable the whole site is.
Other questions?
How many spots, Mr. Gill, are right behind the backside of that building? 104, which includes all the way up around. I haven't counted them, but
Let's count them.
you don't have to count them. I'm just, is there like 50 of them right behind the building exactly?
Now, that's about 12 there, and there's if you go to just the back of the building, that's probably another 8 or 10.
Where his pointer is going, it's a run of 25 or 24.
But that goes all the way,
running Right, running south from the dumpsters all the way to the south end. That's a run of 24 right
So
there.
24. So I'd say 12 on this side, and there's 10 on this side. All right, let's say 24 behind.
Here's my comment on this,
Yes, sir.
okay? And smart growth, the idea is different. It wasn't to come in and build the same thing just in a smaller footprint. That's not the idea of smart growth. It's build something unique, and we'll give you the ability to do it on a smaller footprint where you can get more density, but you're building something different and unique, okay? And I understand that's what you guys are trying to do, and so far, you've done a good job with it. But this building just doesn't hit me as much as a smart growth type building. You're telling me you kind of don't want people walking through the building from the back parking lot through. It's supposed to be where you're walking all over the property. You know, I really wish there'd have been a walkway through the main office building too, so you could get to the garage without going down to Poplar. And then you'd have a common area where you can just kind of go right between the two buildings. You can get to the garage. It makes it much easier, much simpler. So we don't have that on the garage. So we're having to go around either side, either the north or south end of your office building. Now we don't really want you going through this shopping retail building we've got here, and then we want to say, well, you got to have a back. Well, we all know if you've looked at smart growth, don't look at regular retail in Memphis. Go somewhere that has smart growth and look at how they do it, where they have a backside that doesn't look like a backside. Because you know how they do it? They have one entrance. They have one entrance where the supplies come in, and there's where your utilities, they're located on the inside, okay? And they have a hallway that goes to the back of the stores. It can be done, okay? If you look at it, it's not easy. It's not a simple process, but if you put your mind to it, there's ways to make it look like it's not the backside of a building. And I personally, I can't speak for anybody else up here, I personally don't want a customer who's coming out to experience what's supposed to be a unique development and something that we were touting in Germantown, that nobody else has that in Shelby County. And that's what you want, because you want people driven to this particular development, and then they get there and they're looking at it and they pull in the back side and say, oh my gosh, I'm parking back by the dumpsters in the covered, you know, parking thing. This doesn't look, you know, this doesn't look anything special. And so that's the problem I have with the covered parking, and that's the problem I have with those meters showing on the back side. That's where people are gonna park, okay? Particularly after hours. Particularly after hours when they're coming to the restaurants and those office spaces are gone, they're gonna come in. We're lazy Americans, okay? We're parking as close as we can to wherever the heck we're going, all right? So they're gonna come in right there first if they're going to that restaurant. They're not gonna go to your garage back there first. They're gonna go there first. Ah, there's not anything here. Now I'll go to the garage and I'll park and then I'll walk back over. But I'm starting with a spot, maybe somebody just left and I get lucky and there's a spot right in front of the restaurant. So they're gonna come right through there and they're gonna see that every time they come in. And I've just got a problem with the way that looks. I hear what you're saying about going from a 3-story to 2-story, you know, and I understand the economics of that. I can't really argue with the economics of that. I don't like the fact that it's moved from a 3 to a 2, because again, we want density and you want it to look like a kind of a new urban type of environment, and we really didn't create anything different. We got a 2-story retail building, which we can find any other part of Memphis. And that's not what we're trying to do. So there are multiple issues with the overall design that I just don't like about it. So those are my comments.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Commissioner Bennett.
You've done a great job to try to get us there. I just have some issues with where
Sure. I just wanted to point out a few things. I agree with you about smart growth. We wanted more density. We wanted a 3-story building. We really did, and we worked very hard, and we spent a lot of money designing a 3-story building from a 2-story to try to bring the density up. We are big fans of density, so I agree with you too about the point of smart growth. But I also think, I mean, I can't think of another 2-story retail office building in Germantown where the retail on the bottom floor is successful and the office above is successful. I can think of very few in Memphis. So I don't think that this is a departure from from the vision of smart growth. Unfortunately, we are seeing increasing construction costs. We've seen 30 and 40% increases in construction costs on steel because of the tariffs. The world's running out of sand. Concrete is an enormous user of sand. So we're seeing increased construction costs, but in Memphis and in Shelby County in general, Germantown, Collierville, we're not seeing increasing rents. So we're seeing flat rents and increasing construction costs. That's really the squeeze that we're in on this building and another building I'm trying to build on in the middle of East Memphis. One thing about the access, so during the day, you could park in the garage. Let's say you want to access a restaurant in Phase 4, you could park in the garage and you could walk directly through the office building lobby, directly out of the office building lobby door, and then those doors face each other. And so you could walk directly across Trevure Drive and through that glass entrance. Now, there'd be no reason to walk through the glass entrance unless, like you said, your car was parked on the other side, because you're visiting an office tenant upstairs. At night, the building locks down at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, somewhere in there, for MAA's the tenant's own access. They just didn't want people in the building after a certain time without card access. So you're right, at night, you can't walk through the building as just a patron of a restaurant or a retail. If there was an ice cream shop here and you parked in the garage, you would still have to walk out of one side of the garage. I do encourage y'all to go and park in the garage, walk in the building, walk around the building, walk the site and feel how tight it is, because there's not a barrier to distance there. And it doesn't even feel weird. I honestly thought when we were building all those walkways and sidewalks along Poplar that no one was going to ever use them. We use them all the time to walk around the building and through the courtyard and through the garage. So they've been very worthwhile. So I just wanted to clarify some of those things that you brought up in your
Commissioners, do we have other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms.
I've got a
Baker.
question on this issue, and I'm just looking at the site plan. So, and again, thank you for the clarity on, because I was going to ask if the office building was open 24 hours a day, so it's not. So if you parked in the garage and you were a restaurant patron, you'd go around the north side of the office building, because the south side is the driveway entrance to the garage, and then there are dumpsters right there, so.
There are, but they're closed all the time, so they don't feel like, just like these dumpsters. I have staff there 24/7. Well, there's security there 24/7, and then we have staff there business hours. So those doors stay closed all the time to the dumpsters. So when you walk by through the back, for instance,
So there's a sidewalk back there?
There is.
Okay.
Germantown, smart growth, we have sidewalks everywhere.
So the sidewalk's on the back side of the dumpster?
It comes
in between the dumpster and the building?
Well, that's a good point. I don't think if you
Came out of the garage.
If you come out of the garage or down through the courtyard, the sidewalk ends at the drive-in, and then you can walk just around the dumpster, and then you can step back up on the sidewalk and come around the building. But there's not that much traffic back there it doesn't feel dangerous. I'd encourage you to go over there and try. Oh, you can walk behind the dumpster too. But
Commissioners, other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Gill, for the presentation.
thank you all.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this project? If you'd please come forward. Seeing none, do I have a motion, Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Chairman, the Smart Code Review Committee met on August 22nd, 2018, and recommended that the application be considered by the Planning Commission, subject to the subcommittee discussion, staff comments, and staff report, and the plans and documents filed with the application. Letters of recommendation from the DRC and economic development representatives will be provided for the September 4th, 2018 meeting. The main motion tonight, Mr. Chairman, is to approve the revised preliminary and final site plan for Trevure Plan Development Phase 4, subject to the Commission's discussion, staff comments and conditions, and the staff report and the plans and documents filed with the application.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Might add that we do have letters from the DRC and the Economic Development Commission on hand. Both of them are supporting this project. Commissioners, are there any final questions before we vote? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Chairman, I'm voting to approve the application. I do think it's unfortunate that the density of the building has gone from 3-story to 2-story, but completely understand the market forces that are driving that. I do think it'll be interesting having office space above the retail. I'm a little bit concerned with the west side of the building and parking and access to the restaurant, which most likely is going to be really popular like every other restaurant in Germantown. But they are providing the required number of spaces, and I think that ultimately with the garage and the shared uses that you'll just be able to find your way back and forth, most likely around the north side of the office building. So I'm voting to approve.
Mr. Bennett?
I have supported the other 3 phases of this application. I think Gill Properties has done a great job in what they've done. I just, as I mentioned earlier, think there's a little bit more that could be done on this particular phase. That's just, again, my personal opinion. I've seen your work, so I know you can do great things. I've seen what you've done. I just have some issues with this, that it's not quite where we need it to be. And I want to make sure it's a great amenity and people leave and talk to everybody that they see and say how great this facility is, and want everybody to come back. So based on my previous comments, I can't support this, so I'm voting no.
Ms. Hicks?
This is one phase of many. I wish I had been around for the others to see the whole concept. So, and knowing that we are taking smart growth and it's held to a higher standard, I would expect this to be a building that we couldn't put anywhere else in the city, that would only fit here because of, as Commissioner Bennett said, because of its uniqueness. And I don't see that uniqueness in this one. I vote no.
Mr. Saunders?
I do see the uniqueness in this project because smart growth is more an urban concept than it is a suburban concept. And when you get to the urban concept, parking is always a premium. And it's very hard to have parking directly in front of any particular, whether it be restaurant, retail, or office. And you wind up having parking garages, and they are a distance to walk. And I think as this goes along, people will understand how it works. And I do believe the west is a service entrance. I think the design has taken that into consideration. I don't think the meters would be that offensive, and they are put in appropriate places. And so I'm going to be voting yes.
Alderman Owens?
Based on the constraints of the site, I think the developer has done as well as could be expected. It does have some challenges in getting a rear-facing building. I also agree that the Fogelman property to the, west there, will block a lot of that, and I appreciate the video that you showed us to exhibit that. I think we can look forward to some great retail choices. Heard rumors of the dining opportunities that we're going to get. I'm excited about that, and the office above it will produce what we intended with smart growth, so I vote yes.
Chairman Harless?
Mr. Gill, you see you've got a split group up here, and I hope you will take that to heart, because we all want what's best for Germantown, just like I believe you do. If this is another cookie-cutter building, it's not going to be acceptable. This is the gateway to Germantown, the Western Gateway. It is one of our first smart growth facilities. It has to be, I hate to say perfect, but it really has to be perfect. I would ask you to take another strong look at what you got and see what else you can do to make it that much better, tweak it just a little bit. You've heard a couple of suggestions. I'm voting yes, but I'm asking you to take a good, hard look at the building itself. There are other buildings in Germantown, most notably Germantown Village Mall, that has retail below and second-story offices. And if you drive down the back of it, it's terrible. And we don't need that. So that's your challenge. With that, the motion for the Trevure is approved. We now go to the warrants.
Mr. Chairman, warrant number 1, the proposed motion is to approve a warrant from Section 23-792B2-T5 and 23-793A3 to allow the vehicular driveway entrances to parking lots, garages, parking structures to be wider than 30 feet at the frontage as required by the fire marshal.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion? Comments? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Chairman, I'm voting to approve, I think in this condition with a right-in, right-out driveway, that the width warrant request is required.
Mr. Bennett?
I'm voting yes for the same reasons, Mr. Bacon. I think that's, there's some ambiguity in the actual smart growth code on this because it has that right in, right out, so I think it's appropriate to make this warrant.
Ms. Hicks?
For the reasons previously stated, yes.
Alderman Owens?
Also, for the reasons previously stated, I vote yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Voting yes for the prior reasons stated by other commissioners.
Chairman Harless?
I also vote yes, but I do challenge staff to get the policy straight so it is uniform. And the first warrant is approved. Do we have a second warrant?
Mr. Chairman, warrant number 2, the proposed motion to approve a warrant from Section 23-2 to allow 3 parking spaces to be smaller than 180 square feet as required by the zoning ordinance.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, call for the vote.
Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Chairman, I'm voting to approve primarily on the basis that the applicant is providing more parking actually in their count tabulation than is required. And I'm also voting to approve that it's our understanding that these spaces will be designated by sign to be compact car parking, which will work physically, and that with the one-way driveway. So I'm voting to approve.
Mr. Bennett?
I'm voting yes as well for the reasons Mr. Bacon stated, and I think it's fairly common to have compact car spaces. It actually encourages you to use a compact car to save gas and other things, so I think it's appropriate to have compact car spaces in this particular facility.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes, I agree. It's just good planning to keep the smaller cars. It's creative, and yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Although I drive a SUV, I am voting yes for it. There are needs for some compact areas out there, and I think if it's well designated, I think it would encourage the use of them, so yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Chairman Harless?
And for the reasons stated, I also vote yes, and both warrants are approved. We now move on to the second project, and we have staff presentation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I will be recusing myself from item number 2, as our firm represents Madonna Learning Center.
Commissioner Bennett is recusing himself. He'll be stepping down on this matter. If you'll make a note of that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The item before you is a new wireless transmission facility, a cell tower of 140 feet at Madonna Learning Center located at 7007 Poplar Avenue. This request has already been seen by the Board of Zoning Appeals on August 14th, 2018. The Board of Zoning Appeals approved a use on appeal to allow a cell tower in a residential area. That is the first step for a new cell tower in a residential area. Now they are before the Planning Commission for the site plan to approve this new cell tower. You can see here, this is the proposed location of the cell tower. There are some other facilities located in the area. This is a single-use cell tower located within an MLG&W transmission tower. This is also a single-user tower. Both of these are sit much lower than this tower. This proposed tower is one of the highest points in the area, and it would accommodate 3 to 4 carriers, whereas each of these can only accommodate 1 carrier. The proposed tower is located 150 feet from the curb of Poplar, 70 feet from the building at Madonna Learning Center, and about 15 to 20 feet from the side property line. The tower will be located within a compound that'll be 21 feet by 80 feet. It will be surrounded by a wooden fence. There aren't any immediate neighbors. This property over here is Millstone Nursery. This is what the proposed tower would look like. In approving a new wireless transmission facility, Section 23-86H outlines specific requirements. Those requirements are the parcel on which the tower is located must have a minimum of 200 feet of public street frontage, which this parcel does. The tower must be set back from the property lines a minimum distance of the tower's height plus 10 feet. All buildings and structures associated with the tower must follow the setbacks of that zoning district. The maximum tower height is 140 feet. A minimum buffer strip of 50 feet is required on the outer perimeter of the property, and the applicant's engineer must provide documentation that the wireless transmission facility meets or exceeds the ANSI standards of radio frequency emissions. This transmission facility, as you will see, it does not have the 50-foot buffer around it. However, that is a request that they can ask. They can ask for a waiver from that landscaping request from the Design Review Commission. So after this application, should it be approved here by the Planning Commission, it will advance to the Design Review Commission for the landscaping. And at that point, they can request a lesser buffer. The applicant is trying to preserve as many trees as possible around here. And as mentioned, there will be a wooden fence surrounding the compound. There are also gates to Madonna, so it is, the area is somewhat screened still from the public view. The other requirement from which they're requesting a waiver is that the tower be set back from the property line as it is high. Over on this side, it has a lesser setback. However, per the letter submitted by the project engineer on page 16 of your staff report, it does provide technical justification that the tower still would meet standards, meaning that it would collapse into itself rather than falling all the way over onto the property. So therefore, the waiver can be justified because it would still meet technical standards. This is showing what the existing coverage is for T-Mobile. T-Mobile would be one of the carriers potentially on this new tower. This is what it would look like without coverage from T-Mobile in the area. And this is what the coverage would look like if T-Mobile was to locate on this new tower at Madonna. T-Mobile is currently located, let me go back here. It is currently located here within the MLG&W tower. However, they are seeking to be in this new space, new tower, which is about 30 feet higher and also would better accommodate 5G technology. So as mentioned, this application, if approved, would then advance to the Design Review Commission. After being approved by the Design Review Commission, it would advance to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for final approval, and also a development contract before going to Shelby County for a building permit. The applicant is here for any questions.
Are there any questions of staff before we ask the applicant to come forward? Sarah,
yes.
How tall is the fence around the tower?
The fence would be 6 feet. The fence is around the compound in which the tower is located here. and that darker line, and it will be 6 feet tall.
And as I understand it, there's two variations. One is for the landscape buffer that DRC has to approve.
Yes.
And the other one is the 150-foot radius for the tower to drop, or that it meets ANSI standards.
Correct.
So that it will pancake on itself. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Commissioners, any questions? If not, let's have the applicant come forward. You'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Michael Fay of the Prime Development Group, 7520 Capitol Drive. We are here representing tonight Tower Ventures, but this particular tower will be done by one of their companies, Tower Nuco. So when you look at the application, you might see a little bit different name. The name is still the same company. Two things that Sarah had pointed out to you. First of all, in this particular application, which Chairman brought up when we were at BZA, the property is owned by Madonna School. It will continue to be owned by Madonna Day School. My client is coming in and building the tower. They will be the developer, the lessee of the property. When T-Mobile comes in, they'll be a tenant on that particular tower. So we wanted you to understand how all this stacks together. And as we had told staff before, it is our belief, and we believe the city's belief as well, that every tower that goes in this community should be designed so that it can carry 3 to 4 carriers, period. It's that way everywhere. This tower is designed to do that, structurally designed to carry that many carriers. As you saw in our agenda tonight, there was another tower within 2,000 feet of here. We can't tell you if that tower is going to relocate there, but we'd like to think it would. And Madonna Day School would like to think so as well. But ladies and gentlemen, one other thing that has changed with our DRC application is that the Madonna Day Schools, their building committee requested that we put brick columns at each one of the corners, and also 2 more brick columns along their parking lot, just so that it would take in more of the architectural features from their canopy that you see over on the side. Mr. Chairman, you also brought up at the BZA meeting the question about how on earth do these things pancake on themselves? I really like that term that you choose, but in this particular case, the towers are designed structurally so that at a specific point in the middle, in the event they are hit, or if there's some type of catastrophic 200-mile-an-hour wind, it will break on itself. It is designed, that's in your package, that letter. And that can be designed to fall in a specific way. Your concern, as was the school's concern, was in the event that there was a catastrophic event that their building wouldn't be hit. The other concern is also our next door neighbor, TVA. So we have two people next door who want to make sure that that won't happen, as well as our client. So we have experts who are going to make sure that that happens, and is designed in that fashion. This particular piece of property that you're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is just a small tract, but when we look at cell tower locations in town, this may be as close to perfect as we can find. We don't have an affected next door neighbor that's a resident. We are sitting on a high point, and we're also sitting in a location that is probably our busiest road in town. We believe that's why this is going to be beneficial for the city. We hope that you will see other applications in here for other tenants, AT&T, Verizon, other companies to come on here and to go on to this. That was why it was designed this way. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much for your response. Questions, commissioners? Couple of questions. Am I correct that Madonna is totally supporting this project?
Yes, sir.
100%?
They will be the recipient of a monthly stipend.
And has TVA blessed it? Have they expressed any concern? Because obviously they don't want a 140-foot tower falling on their transmission lines.
Mr. Chairman, TVA does not have any authority on this particular application. That burden falls on us.
Okay. But the standard says this will pancake on itself. We don't have to worry about that.
It's not standards, Mr. Chairman. You actually have a letter in your file. I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind is the tower they're in right now. I mean, we all think about electricity and safety. They have a tower within one of those TVA erector sets. It's working. So they obviously have quite a good relationship with that design, but these towers, as we've all seen, a few years ago, there was a tornado that went through Tuscaloosa. The only thing standing were the cell towers. Power was out, they pulled the generators up, and that's what saved, that gave the emergency responders the ability to communicate. So the designs passed there, so I think that design system is working pretty well.
Very good. Commissioners, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yeah.
just a couple of
Mr. Sanders.
clarification. Good. Design will be, as you've shown here, a evergreen type tree at the top, correct?
Yes, sir.
And all the cabling, which is probably not that much anymore, if there's any, would go up to the center of it?
It is internally, and in some of the older towers, there were just 2 holes, now there are more. So each carrier can feed their lines up there.
Okay. What color is the base of it? Like a tree, brown?
Brown.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, the subdivision and site plan subcommittee met on August 22nd, 2018, and considered that this item be heard at the regular Planning Commission meeting on September 4th, today, 2018. The proposed motion is to approve a new wireless transmission facility, 140-foot cell tower at Madonna Learning Center, 7007 Poplar Avenue, subject to the Commission's discussion, staff comments, and conditions in the staff report, and the plans and documents filed with the application.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Do we have questions from the commissioners? Alderman?
Just a comment, and I guess this is directed maybe to Sheila. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first application, as this body will remember, those who were present at the time, we revised the ordinance to amend, because we heard from the residents, we heard from our constituents that they were not getting the cell coverage that they wanted, and so we revised the ordinance to allow for a greater height, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, to reduce the fall zone to allowable ANSI standards, essentially, where it was, the tower plus 10 feet. We shrunk that so we would create greater spaces or greater number of spaces where towers could locate. Is this the first that we've seen since that time?
This is actually the second application. The first application, it was approved, but the tower was not built. So this would be the second.
Well, we appreciate you coming here, and I know our residents appreciate the additional service, and hopefully, like you said, we can get some additional carriers on this tower. That's all.
Call for a vote.
Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Chairman, I'm voting to approve. I appreciate Alderman Owens bringing that up. Actually, was going to bring up that very issue, so we have covered that path that allows the taller towers to be built. I'm not a big fan of the look of these things. This is the best location to put it. I think that the community is going to benefit substantially with better cell coverage. If you look at where it is located next to the TVA power lines and the TVA towers, it's probably not as objectionable as it could be. And then lastly, this will benefit Madonna Learning Center from a financial standpoint. But it's a high point. It'll increase coverage substantially, so I'm voting to approve.
Ms. Hicks?
I like that it will pancake on itself. At first, when you think about it being near a school, it is frightening, but I've had an education on pancaking towers, and I like it. I like that you'll have multiple tenants. I like the brick columns that you're adding. I do think you're doing this right, and it is far from residential, so there is a lot to like. So yes, hurry up.
Mr. Saunders?
I'm gonna vote yes, and the biggest reason I'm looking at it is a community benefit, and one of the worst things in the world with our capability of being in constant contact through smartphones and everything else, it's actually demanding of it for our community, so I'll be voting yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Chairman Harless.
I'd like to commend staff for modifying the existing cell phone tower policy to add the additional height. This is a safety issue. We've got to have more coverage. We have the fire marshal here with us, and I'm sure he concurs that we've got dead spots, and it's not good when somebody has a fire or an emergency that they can't reach out to us. So I vote yes. And with that, it's approved, and we hope to see construction shortly. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda has been withdrawn. We now go to item 4. If Commissioner Bennett would rejoin us. Can you blame him? So are you making staff presentation?
Yes, thank
Good.
you, Chairman Harless.
Thank you.
So the next item before you is Oldfield Green subdivision. There's a request for a preliminary and final subdivision plat. The project site is located in the R Single-Family Residential Zoning District, just north of Winchester Road, off of Forest Hill Irene Road. Currently, these are 2 separate parcels, each with a single-family house on it. The proposal is to develop a 33-lot subdivision and common open space. This would be a standard R single-family residential subdivision, so 15,000 square foot lots or larger. The setbacks would comply with the zoning ordinance. It is not a PD or a planned unit development. As you can see here, the subject site, there's the one house, and there's the other. They would be demolished, and there is a lake right here that crosses the 2 properties. That lake would be filled as part of this proposal. So here you have the breakdown of the project, the 33 lots, and then the standard setbacks. As mentioned, it all complies with the code. The common open space area, as you can see here, there's the main common open space area is a retention basin, which would also be an amenity for the area. There would be a path along here on this side, and also some benches to sit. When the subcommittee looked at this project about 2 weeks ago, there were a couple of items that they had asked for more clarification or some revisions. Some of those items related to the grading and drainage plan. One of them is with the filling in of the lake down here. They wanted to see that the plans complied better with what the Public Works Assistant Director and what the city engineer would like to see in terms of design. The project engineer did work with the city engineer on that to come up with this revised version here. Along those lines, they also wanted to have a memorandum of understanding that solidified the construction along here and the filling in of the lake, and that this property owner is clear on what will happen. The applicant did provide a memorandum of understanding. We had the city attorney look at it, and it is not a legally binding document, so that is something that does need to be addressed. One of the other points that was brought up at subcommittee was related to the water plan. The water lines aren't shown on here, but initially there wasn't a looping back onto Forest Hill Irene Road, and both the fire department and the Public Works Department said that the water lines needed to be looped back onto Forest Hill Irene Road for complete water service, and the applicant has done that per the water plans. Another item that was discussed at the subcommittee, in which there was more clarification needed, is the tree protection plan. Here you can see the revised tree protection plan. This area in the middle, it's hard to see on the screen here, but these are the trees that will be removed, and then these are the trees that are being proposed to remain. This development will be developed by different home builders. Different home builders can buy lots and develop the lots as they wish. Thus, the developer before you wishes to leave as many trees as possible on the site to give the home builders flexibility to decide which trees they would like to remove and which they would like to keep. As part of that, we are then requesting that when each application for a building permit come forward for their stormwater permit to the city, that they indicate at that time which trees are being removed. Typically, this is only a requirement if the lot is an acre or greater. However, since we're not clear which all trees will be coming out with the building of the houses, we do want to see that indicated on the stormwater permit. The final tree mitigation plan will then go to the Design Review Commission. Should this project be approved by the Planning Commission, the Design Review Commission will be the one that then makes the final determination on the tree mitigation plan, and then we'll approve that. The final item which the subcommittee had asked about was, does the neighborhood know about this project? The applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting last week, and he can tell you the outcome of that. We did provide him with a more extended radius. The radius, I'll go back here to the overview of the property. The standard 300-foot radius wasn't hitting many properties, so we did give the applicant some other context farther afield so that the greater neighborhood would be notified as well. So should this project receive approval from the Planning Commission, it will then advance to the Design Review Commission for landscaping plans and subdivision entrance feature approvals. After that, it can go through the construction plan process, and a development contract would be approved by the BMA. The BMA does not need to approve the subdivision plat or any plan, since this is a standard subdivision. So that concludes staff's report, and the applicant is here.
Thank you, Sarah. Question. We had a discussion in the executive session regarding the memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
Am I correct that that is not a legal document?
I'm going to defer to Mr. McCarroll, the city attorney, on that. He did review that for us.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. It says explicitly that it's not legally binding, so any reliance on it in the future for anything is no more.
This issue regarding the lake and the water runoff and the fact that we have a citizen just to the south of the property that would be affected, and there's no protection in writing for this citizen, leads me to table this item on the agenda for tonight. I'm going to ask the applicant and staff to get together to see if they can't devise a document that will provide protection for everyone. And with that, we will table it for 30 days. Next item.
Ms. Ponder is grabbing Mr. Ross. He would like to do the presentation for the final item.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm going to have to recuse myself on the last item, so I'm going to...
Thank you, Alderman Owens. We appreciate you making it tonight.
And thank your daughter for patience.
Okay. I will present the final items.
Sarah, just a second.
Yes. So the final item before you this evening is Maplewood Planned Development, request for gates at their subdivision entrance. Maplewood was developed as a planned development with a private street system here off of Forest Hill Irene Road. It was approved on July 2nd, 2013. At that time, when the Planning Commission approved this 35-lot planned development with private streets, it did not approve gates, and the Planning Commission expressly stated that should any gates be requested in the future, that request needed to come before the Planning Commission. In July of 2008, the Planning Commission adopted a private streets policy, which outlines specifications of gates. One of the main portions that one of the main criteria that in this policy is that a call box be located 60 feet from the edge of pavement of an improved intersecting street to allow for sufficient stacking. So here you can see the location of where the gates would be. Right there are existing medians, and there are columns where the gates would be located. The call boxes would be just south of these medians, and this is how Forest Hill Irene Road is improved at today. This white dipping in line here, that is the public right-of-way. So that's technically where Forest Hill Irene Road goes to. As you can see here on the layout for the gates, this is where the call box would be located. On one entrance, it would be 60 feet from the existing intersection of pavement, and on the other, it would be 58 feet from the intersection of pavement. The width of the gates have been revised to meet fire department requirements of 20 feet. As mentioned, this is the public right-of-way line. So the road is not improved to here. The road is improved to here. This is still technically public right-of-way. Right now, the street is not improved there, and there aren't definite plans as to how the right-of-way could be improved. There have been thoughts of how it could be improved, but it has not yet been determined how that will be improved. Thus, if the gates are to be approved in this location, the city is requesting that the HOA for this development enter into a hold harmless agreement so that the city is not held liable for any accidents or stacking issues that could occur in this area right here. Here, this gives you an elevation view of what the gates would look like. Should this proposal be approved, it would then advance to the Design Review Commission for a revised landscape plan, and then it would go to the Neighborhood Services Division, Fire Department for approval, and then finally, the final plan would need to be re-recorded to reflect these gates. So just to note that when the Planning Commission approves this, they're approving a waiver to the 60 feet because from this point here where the call box is, it is not 60 feet to the actual public right-of-way. So that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here for any questions.
Mr. Ross, do you have a comment?
Real quick, just after conferring with the applicant and discussing some of the items that were brought up at the executive session of the Planning Commission, they have decided to request this item be tabled until the next meeting so that they can have an opportunity to meet with the city engineer and meet with staff and the city attorney to go over options as it relates to design improvements for this gate.
I think the commission is pleased to see the applicant table this item and sit down with staff to discuss the right-of-way issues because it is safety-driven. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a request that when we do see it, that it have some more drawings about the right-of-ways and what is and what might be? It'd be very helpful to me.
Commissioner Hicks, that's a good point. Thank you.
We'll request that there's some colors added to designate rather than just black and white drawings. Those have been helpful through the right-of-way acquisition process with the board, so we can certainly request that they highlight the different options. And with it having two entrances as well, I think it'll be helpful, and I'm just sort of ad-libbing here, but looking at them together rather than separately, because there are two entrances into this neighborhood, and looking at how they work in concert rather than considering them independently can also show how it's a system of gates. Any other request that we might?
I'd like to make one request if I could, just, since I'm one of these that like measurements. Could you put the actual measurement that's going to be that they're trying to get approved so we don't have to sit here and try to interpolate what it's supposed to be?
Yes, because not all of us are good at math, so I will.
Well, even we are. It's hard to,
No,
it's
that's
hard to
for
add
me,
two and two
so-
together and come up with five here.
Commissioner Bacon.
Well, and actually, I was going to make that same comment, and I guess the challenge is that until we know exactly where the edge of pavement is with the design of Forest Hill improvements in that location, we're going to be challenged to approve it. So unless we make a variance to the 60, unless we grant, was it a limited waiver or waiver, which could put the city in some measure of risk, possibly. It's going to be a safety issue, potentially stacking out in the roadway. That the challenge is going to be, where is that edge of pavement ultimately? And I believe that is going to be subject to be
Mr.
determined.
Chairman, may I add
to
something
be
here?
designed.
Just, I know everybody wants to
Commissioner
go home.
Sanders.
Everybody wants to go home, but I'll be honest with you, you know, we have the ordinance and the information that you're supposed to have for safety issue. Unless they can get together and come up with something that has less issues, I am not going to put the city in harm's way on any type of hold harmless agreement. You know, so that goes to tell you where I stand on this thing, and rest, so you need to pass that along to the applicant.
Consider it passed.
Commissioners, are there any other items that we need to discuss? We have a gentleman in the audience who would like to be heard. Sir, if you'll come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Malhotra. I'm the neighbor where we're discussing this project, actually.
Which project is that,
the
sir?
Maplewood project. I'm next door neighbor, and in the past, I've been here discussing about this issue. Anyway, my request was denied last time because this project had 2 gates, and in turn, it so happened in order to accommodate the cars, we had to take part of my land, I would not say my land, but the part of the land which I own the next door, it was kind of cut into it because that, of course, belongs to the city. But here is my concern with making gates here, and as you already said that, I think it will be a safety concern. The lanes are very narrow, and if the cars are stacked one behind each other and the gate takes time to open, it's going to be certainly a issue of safety. The cars are, there's no space for the cars to come inside. At least at this point, I mean, the cars can go in right away. So that's definitely my concern, as you all pointed out.
Well, I think you heard the same thing from this
Right.
body up here, and I would encourage you to come back in 30 days when we have this come before us.
Surely, surely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your
Appreciate
comments.
it. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions, comments? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you.